Good morning, and a beautiful morning it is here at Lower Trestles in Southern California. Welcome to Dawn Patrol, and another classic day here in Southern California, guys. We had hot tropical weather for 4 consecutive days. I think we finally got a little bit of fall weather amongst us this morning. Todd Klein joined by Strider Wazalewski and Peter Mel, pumping surf for 4 days, guys, and we are already into the quarterfinals for the Hurley Pro and the semifinals for the Swatch Women's Pro. With so much action, we've got an epic day ahead of us in this show this morning. As we look forward this morning, we'll look at the Hurley Pro and the Swatch Women's Pro Day 4 highlights, which was yesterday. Progression versus rail surfing. We know that Lower Trestles is the perfect ramp for both of those. We'll see which one plays out better here. And we'll talk with Jamie Brissac, former championship tour competitor, now giving back to the world, as well as we'll talk about the final matchups for the men and the women. So a lot ahead of us here this morning. And guys, as we just reflect a little bit about yesterday, Strider, it's first and foremost, it's amazing how good the surf was for 4 days. But looking back yesterday, let's talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, the waves were absolutely perfect like you're talking about. It's just been pumping for days on end. I mean, we've gotten a chance to surf. Everybody around in the town's gotten a chance to surf. And the competitors have had the chance to go mad. I mean, everything you want from a performance. You've got carve game out there. You've got size enough to give them speed, power. And then you've got the lip game coming after it. It kind of started out like bigger, and now it came into like a smaller, more head-high range where Philippe Toledo just went mad.
Pete, do you see any of the buckets or the Christmas trees that Strider's always talking about?
Of course. I think the performances were solid throughout the day and throughout the event so far. I mean, obviously the canvas was there. I mean, the takeaway for me yesterday was how the world title kind of implications came about. You have guys like Owen out, sitting at number 3. You have Julian Wilson out, so there's 3 left there that are contending. ADS is still going to be able to hold on to that yellow jersey depending on where Mick Fanning fits in with that. And then, of course, Felipe Toledo in a perfect place for him to be able to gain some ground. And then on the women's, you got Carissa Moore sitting in a really good position now with Courtney Collig falling out. And Bianca Baitendog, another person who sits in that number 4 spot, has had a good roll going, has a great chance to put herself in the world title talk.
You just covered it all. Let's take our coffee and get out of here, guys. Let's look back at yesterday's highlights. As you point out, a big position change with Courtney Conalog losing. Now Carissa Moore will regain that yellow jersey. Looking back yesterday, the performance once again from the women's Strider was through the roof.
Yeah, you know what? They had so much fun. You could just tell. Unfortunately for Tatiana, she never really got her flow. She threw down some nice turns, but catching an edge, as you can see. But this was the performer of the day to me, Lakey Peterson, Pete.
Well, I think that the conditions were right up her alley. She's got a good team with her right now. She's confident. I think that's really helpful for her. And, she had a big heat that she had to win, and she put it together over Courtney. I think that was going to be the matchup of that round.
I got a question for you guys. We saw Sally Fitzgibbons yesterday lose out. Current number 3 in the world. What do you think was the difference yesterday for Sally, Strider?
She just, I feel like she's moving a little slower. She didn't have as much pep in her step. I mean, she needed more in her game. But moving on, I mean, look at these guys and what they're doing. The future of surfing. There's some of this, it's all one heat. Look at the Brazilian Storm going mad. These guys, technical, tail whips, throwing down carves. And Medina, he looks hungry.
Well, we had 6 Brazilians of the 12, and now we have 4 left. They're all kind of split up through the back half of that quarterfinal. So it's a great opportunity for that Storm to keep brewing. And they look very, very strong out here, especially the likes of rookie Wiggly Dantas.
Yeah, and Mick Fanning, we know every day how solid he's going to be. This was a big heat yesterday. The beach was absolutely packed up against Kelly Slater. Bit of a controversial wave here. We'll dive into this a little bit more after this. But Slater, let's talk about his performance yesterday, Strider.
Yeah, you know what? He just looked like he was a little behind the 8 ball. I mean, if you put it apples to oranges, you kind of see the fact that you saw Mick Fanning timing was really on and Kelly's was a little bit off. But, the ladies, swooping turns right there, beautiful surfing. The performance levels were through the roof all the way through the entire day, and it never let up. And that's what we love about Lower Trestles, is that it's going to give you a platform, and you're going to see it all day no matter what, whether the wind's coming out of any direction, you got a left or a right, it's going to just lay it out for you, and we're going to see the best surfing in the world.
Well, I was really impressed by the rail surfing that I was seeing yesterday from the women. A lot of talk about that wave that we saw yesterday with Kelly Slater up against Mick Fanning. That crazy maneuver. I actually looked away while it was happening live. I didn't think there was any way Kelly was going to ride out of this aerial. Talk to us, Pete, and break this down and why it was only a 4-point ride.
Well, I think you have to basically say that this maneuver wasn't really pulled off. That's the thing. When you go down to your stomach and have to stand back up, the interesting part is the rest of this wave here. He had the 360, little backside 3, and then that was basically the one turn of the wave. Other than that, I mean, we debated it before the score even came out.
We're going to right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just talking about the reaction that we had right away out of it. We were kind of contemplating, like, where could you have gone? I mean, we talked about going 4, we talked about going 8 5s, 9s, and so it's one of those things that it's just it's reactionary, but once you watch the replay and stuff, you realize that wasn't a completed move. He stuffed a couple rails. It wasn't going to be something that was going to get, maybe it could have gone 6, went 4-1-7 by the 5 guys up there, and that's what it is. It sticks his
I
head.
think because of the dynamic, ability that he showed, followed it up with a couple of maneuvers. Those couple of maneuvers on its own, I mean, I felt like it was more of a 6-5 range, something that kind of put him in the game.
Yep.
And with that, mentally, you're going to be in a different place. It's going to change your game when you're in the heat, and then you're just going to go after different scores and not be on the fence for a 9.
Let's talk about that. I mean,
but this is later in the heat, though.
No.
You're going to bring things
Settle
up
down,
that are
boss.
later.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the first 2 waves that were ridden by Mick Fanning, 6.7, 7.87. Those were 2 waves when he caught that 4-point ride.
He'd already had them?
He'd already had them. Those were the 2 waves that Mick had already got. Right, and
right.
then I'm agreeing with you here,
right.
because that's a 6.5. That's a 6.5
We're still in the same
or a
car.
7. Yeah, if that's a 6.5 or a 7, right? He's in the game mentally, and he's not having to fight back. Whereas now he's a 4. All of a sudden, his mind changes. He's got to be able to put more out of it. He's going to have to try harder. He's going to do things that he's not going to be relaxed.
Right.
And I think it changes the mindset of the heat. And I'm agreeing with you. Don't yell at me. We're all good.
I'm with you guys as well. In the end, the big move, though, that everyone was really fired up about, he had to go to his stomach. So as you point out, it was incomplete.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a breakdown on yesterday's wave, guys. Rosie Hodge standing by with our commissioner for an update on today's competition.
Yeah, thanks, boys. I love the way that you're getting fired up about it. That gets me excited to watch the rest of the action. But right now, Kieran Perot, we're aware that we won't run the contest today. You've had a couple waves. What are the conditions like, and what are they looking like for the rest of the week?
Yeah, I mean, there's some fun waves out there definitely today. Unfortunately we can't run. The swell's a little bit less powerful. It's lost some of that energy, so it's not really great. It's not, the day we were looking for to finish. We're hoping that we'll get something better than this. Tomorrow, this swell kind of hangs in there a little bit more, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And then that swell that fills in through Thursday, late Wednesday into Thursday this week, it looks like it could be a pretty decent ground swell. Hopefully it's going to be in the head-high range, and that might be the premium kind of day.
And we've had 4 consecutive days of competition, obviously, running into the weekend. Why is it that we can't run today?
We just have a permit, so restriction on our permitting. We have to pick one of the weekend days. And so we picked yesterday. That was the better day of surf. So today we have to have a day off, and the guys out there enjoying it. And it's a beautiful day down here, but unfortunately no contest today.
All right, well, we can get in the water, but what we've seen in the water competing, the progressive turns that we've seen from Philip Toledo, as well as the rail surfing from the likes of Mick Fanning, I can't wait to see what happens at lowers. We'll be breaking that down on the desk with the boys.
morning and welcome back to Lower Trestles here for Dawn Patrol. We keep talking about progression versus rail surfing, power surfing. Well, we know that power surfing has been around since the inception of competitive surfing, guys, and above the lip surfing continues to evolve. We hear from the surfers now, what is the perfect balance here at Lower Trestles?
We are at the premier high-performance wave on tour, I'd say. This wave just offers up the most perfect ramp to do every type of maneuver in the book.
What wins it here is definitely combination. I think rail work gets you to a certain point, but you got to have that extra air game.
When you come to lowers, it's all about performance. It's always been that high-performance wave since the 70s, 80s. You know, late 80s, this became like the place where everyone was starting to do new maneuvers, tail slides and air reverses and stuff like that. So, you know, it's always been known as a high-performance wave.
There's some waves of size and power, and with that, you have to be able to link your turns. And, you know, the older generation, they're putting their timing together, their knowledge of wave riding and linking and calming their nerves down enough to where they can pace themselves on a wave and really just unleashing on the lip, breaking the fins free just enough to have the new school flare in it, but pushing hard enough with the power and connecting it back in on the bottom, go straight back into another one. Doing airs, coming out of those maneuvers sometimes can be really hard and can break up the flow of a wave.
You can kind of see the guys that go to the air a lot might struggle in the first few rounds because, you know, it's not as easy to go straight to the air as it is to put it on rail. So I think if those guys get through, there'll be some amazing fireworks out there and can kind of let out the full bag of tricks.
Yeah, it is such a high performance wave, and you know, I think there's more than one way to get a 10 out here. You know, you can do huge airs or, you know, surf it perfectly.
Trademark Freddie hucking buckets out the back.
Fred Patachia, your first perfect 10 of the 2015 Hurley Pro.
You know, you can't really start worrying about what everyone else is doing. You just got to do what you can do when you can do it.
You know, it looks like we have a good swell for the week. It's clean conditions, winds look mellow, and you know, so I think it's going to come down to maybe a little bit less air and a little bit more carve and flow.
Epic to look back there on some of the highlights throughout this event and the balance between progression and rail surfing. After watching that, guys, and, you know, watching the performances from the last 4 days, who do you think is going to come out on top? You know, what is it going to take to win this event, Pete Mel? I know the conditions will change, you know, so it's going to have to be the day, but based on what we've seen
it's going to be
so
smaller.
far.
I mean, we're not going to have the same kind of stuff we saw the first 3 days. It'll be more like yesterday and even today. But, you know, you look at the top half of the draw, you got Felipe against Joel. I think that's probably the best of the four matchups that kind of explains the power versus air. I mean, Felipe is going to take to the air no matter what. We'll see at least one air or two airs in that heat. And Joel's going to kind of be in that flowy, carby, and then tail-free stuff. And you know, if Felipe could stomp a couple airs and you get that wow factor, what we've seen, it's just going to be really hard to beat.
Well, there's only one guy in the draw here that doesn't have, you know, kind of a both of the games right there. I mean, it's Ace Bucket. You know, he's basically the one guy in the draw that can just he's going to go straight up into the lip every time, throw down power carves and snaps and do his thing on the face. He doesn't really take a lot of risk. We might see some out of him, maybe, but I really doubt it. It's interesting to see that one guy is still in there with all these other guys. I mean, all these guys are progressive. They're all above the lip surfers. They're all powerful. They can do what they need to do out there. But he's the one guy that I look at and I go, wow, this guy's still in it. And it's kind of a surprise to me.
That's a good point, Strider, but, you know, I'll throw right back at you. The only perfect 10 we've seen so far in this event, Freddie Patachia, and it was all on the face, all about the power.
True that, but that happened on a bigger day when the waves were pumping. And when you have pumping surf, you're not going to see the above-the-lip surfing as much. And on that day, it was all about power surfing, rail game, and straight-up maneuvers, and that's what Freddie P brought that day.
Whatever coffee you've got, you are on point today. Strider Wazalewski. Coming up next, Jamie Brissac, former championship tour competitor, now author, and always giving back to the communities, will join us here on the set. Stay with us.
another great step with our partnership with the WSL. We use the resources to collaborate with the U.S. Army and the Colombian Navy to serve a way out population with one very basic but very significant need, and that's access to clean water.
Welcome back to Dawn Patrol. We shift gears now. I've got some new guests on the set. Former Championship Tour competitor and beautiful Rosie Hodge, another former Championship Tour competitor and handsome Jamie Brissac. Jamie, you've been working with Waves for Water. First and foremost, good morning and welcome.
Good morning and great to see you.
Good to see you as well, Jamie. You've been working with Waves for Water now for quite a while. What have you been up to?
Well, I've done 3 trips, Lebanon, Mexico, and Colombia. And they've been fantastic trips. I mean, on the one hand, you're doing this wonderful thing of bringing clean water to places that don't have access to it. The thing that's been interesting for me is as a former professional surfer, I traveled around the world for 5 years, and it was terrific, and it kind of very much opened me to travel, but I was with the blinders on, focused on trying to win the tournament, which I rarely did, by the way. Doing this, you kind of immerse yourself in the culture in a way that's fantastic. You get down with the locals, so to speak, and you learn socioeconomics of the various countries that you visit. So it's great. It's really great.
Well, you don't always give back. You also recently, you've been writing for about 20 years now, and recently actually wrote a book, Westerly Windina, formerly known as Peter Druin. Talk to us a little bit about that story.
Fascinating story. So in 2008, Peter Druin, who was a visionary and a great surfer from Australia, came out on national television in Australia saying that Peter is gone and I am now Westerly Windina, living as a woman. So I went for the Surfer's Journal to write a profile of Westerly in 2009. We became close, and that grew into this book and a documentary film that we're working on as well. But it's a fascinating story because I didn't know this about Peter Druin. I knew more, how beautifully he surfed on a wave, but he was a real visionary and inventor, and he actually introduced man-on-man surfing in the 1977 Stubbies at Burleigh Heads, which Michael Peterson won. And man-on-man surfing is what we see out here every day. So I think, she, I should say, Westerly, formerly Peter, has been so important to pro surfing.
Well, I also feel like, you see Peter, he's a competitive surfer. You know the emotional roller coaster that you get to go on as a competitive surfer, and you get to see this person take this other transformation. So for yourself, just seeing that and being at the forefront of watching someone emotionally become who they are. So, for your journey to write this book, just tell us a little bit about, what that took for you to really see that perspective of someone on that knife edge of becoming something else.
No, you raise a really good point. I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about being a competitive, high-level athlete is that you're digging deep into yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're getting in touch with yourself in a way that people who are less competitive with themselves don't know. I remember when I was competing, when I would think about it, I'd think I'm trying to mine my inner Superman. There's this guy inside of me that can triumph and win this event, and I just got to pull him out. Mm-hmm. So thinking about Peter Druin spending much of his life doing this, just being more intense, keeping a really high bar on oneself. I think, that's with the emergence of Westerly, much of that was happening. But what was really fascinating for me is just becoming friends with Westerly and meeting someone who is so deeply human. I remember early on, I had the sense that I was talking to someone. It was as if all the skin had come off, and the viscera and the beating heart was just right there before me. Another way to put that would be Westerly wears everything on her sleeve. But it was just a really fascinating experience.
Becoming Westerly Windina, unbelievable. And thanks for joining us, Jamie. Let's catch up now with Peter Mel, and find out what that forecast is looking like. We know that we got a lot of competition left. We're into those finals. Pete, what's happening with the forecast?
Well, Todd, we got 1 day left of competition, and we got to figure out which day we're going to run. We didn't get to run today, so let's take a look at that forecast from Surfline. Kevin Wallace has been giving us spot on. And, you can see that southern hemi has been really what we've been watching. There was a lot of storm activity throughout that entire last week, which is what we've been seeing, and it's going to continue. There's a little dribble that'll keep flowing in here to Trestles. I mean, this is a full magnet. There's also a bit of tropical from Melinda still around as well. Looking forward, though, I mean, we really need to figure out when that last day of competition will be. Tomorrow looks like there is a little bump in swell. So we'll be back here early checking on Monday. I think Kieran has left that door open. Tuesday, Wednesday, it looks all right. But then we look at Thursday, and ultimately Thursday looks like to me that's going to be the best day of competition. But we will be here tomorrow to check back into that. So boys, I think that's our days, either Monday or Thursday. But when we come back, we're going to be checking out more on the desk, so don't go anywhere. Sorry about that, guys.
We're at Lower Trestles here for the competition of the Hurley Lowers Pro. It's probably the most perfect place for a competition that's maneuver-based. This place has just got this perfect peak of these cobblestone rocks that go out here and formed like these really long sweeping rights. Gives you section after section down the line, or gives you a perfect tapered wall to do any kind of maneuvers. It's just so much fun, and I normally try and sit just out from the groms and try and pull rank on the grommets on the inside.
Thanks, GoPro breakdown right there. I tell you what, Lower Trestles, she has been good to us. 4 consecutive days of competition. We're into the quarterfinals now for the Hurley Pro. As we look at those matchups, we knew these guys were going to be there because they've been standouts throughout the entire event. We talked about the progression versus rail surfing. And as we look at these quarterfinals, Strider, starting with you, who do you think we're going to see in that final?
You know what? It's hard. I really love the way Joel's surfing in this event. It's going to be really hard for him to overtake Philip Toledo, but my pick out of this whole thing would be, Joel on the top end and probably Mick on the bottom, just to keep that title race for him alive.
Sounds like pure power to me. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I think we've all been talking about Felipe as being a standout. I think that he's still one to talk about, on the bottom half of the draw. I'm going to stick with my boy Nat. He was able to get through a tough heat yesterday. And then the women's, I'll stay with Lakey Peterson and Carissa Moore in that final.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's going to be, no matter what, all those women deserve to be in the final, but it's going to be great to see that thing play out. And I agree with you right there, Pete. They're just surfing so good. Yeah, today we're going to be on the same team.
Cool. Hey, I like that.
Alrighty, well, all smiles down here, guys. Thanks so much for you guys giving us your insight, and it looks like we will kick things off here hopefully soon. It could even be tomorrow, and let's keep our fingers crossed as we sleep tonight. And you know what? Today, it's opening NFL day, guys. Sunday, I'm going home to paint my face teal and orange. I love those Dolphins, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. on Dawn Patrol. Niners, geez. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.